The howling wind drowned out Genevieve Sutton's desperate cry as she stumbled through knee-deep snow, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other gripping a broken lantern that had long since gone dark. Arizona Territory, 1887, was proving far crueler than any Eastern newspaper had advertised, especially for a 22-year-old widow 6 months with child and hopelessly lost in what locals called the season's worst blizzard. 10 miles south, Finn Zachary sat before a dying fire in his modest cabin on the outskirts of Apache Junction, Arizona, his weathered hand absently stroking the head of his loyal cattle dog. The howl of the wind reminded him of wolves, hungry and searching a sound that stirred something primal in his 30 years of existence. His ears perked at an unfamiliar noise carried on the winter gale, something that didn't belong to the night's natural symphony. Finn frowned, rising to his feet, boots scraping against rough-hewn floorboards. He'd tracked lost cattle through worse conditions, but tonight felt different. Something or someone was calling to him through the storm. Genevieve had left Tucson 3 days earlier, traveling by stagecoach toward Apache Junction, where her late husband's cousin had promised her work as a schoolteacher. The baby wasn't due until spring, giving her time to establish herself before the birth. But the stagecoach had encountered trouble when the blizzard struck suddenly, forcing the driver to seek immediate shelter at a way station. The other passengers had insisted on waiting out the storm, but Genevieve, hearing that Apache Junction was just 5 miles northeast, had foolishly decided to continue on foot after the storm appeared to lighten. That had been 6 hours ago. Now the temperature had plummeted, the snow was blinding, and she had no idea which direction led to safety. Her boots, sensible for city walking but woefully inadequate for a blizzard, had filled with snow. Her fingers had lost feeling an hour ago. The baby kicked frantically inside her, as if sensing its mother's growing panic. "Please," she whispered, her voice immediately swallowed by the howling wind. "Someone help us." Finn saddled his most sure-footed horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding named Copper. The animal snorted in protest as Finn led him from the warm stable into the bitter cold. Copper was the only horse he trusted in conditions like these. Finn wrapped himself in layers of wool and leather, covering his face with a thick scarf, leaving only his sharp blue eyes exposed to scan the white landscape. He secured a rifle to his saddle, along with extra blankets, provisions, and a medical kit. His instincts rarely led him astray, and tonight they screamed that someone needed him. "Let's go, boy," he murmured to Copper, swinging into the saddle. The horse's warm breath created ghostly clouds in the freezing air. "Someone's out there." The dog, Ranger, darted ahead, his nose to the ground. If anyone could find a trail in this white hell, it was Ranger. Genevieve collapsed against a boulder, no longer able to feel her feet. The snow had soaked through her heavy wool dress, her coat providing minimal protection against the relentless elements. She tried to remember the prayers her mother had taught her as a child, but her mind was becoming as numb as her extremities. The world had narrowed to white pain and the desperate need to protect her unborn child. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered, placing both hands on her belly. "I've failed you before you've even had a chance to live." The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if refusing to accept defeat. That small movement rekindled something in Genevieve. She pushed herself up, determined to keep moving. She would not die here, not while her child fought to live within her. She stumbled forward, no longer certain of direction, only of the need to keep moving. In the distance, she thought she heard something, a bark perhaps. But that was impossible. Who would have a dog out in this storm? Her mind was playing tricks, giving her false hope in her final hours. Finn narrowed his eyes against the stinging snow. Ranger had caught a scent, darting ahead with newfound purpose. Copper followed, his powerful legs pushing through the drifts. They'd been searching for nearly an hour, moving in widening circles away from the cabin. Finn's hands were stiff with cold despite his thick gloves, but he pushed on, guided by Ranger's excited movements. Then he saw a flash of dark fabric against the endless white. Ranger was already there, barking furiously to signal his discovery. "Hello," Finn called, his voice carried away by the wind. "Hold on, I'm coming." Genevieve thought she was hallucinating when she first heard the bark. When she saw the dog bounding toward her, she was certain her oxygen-deprived brain was conjuring comforting visions before death. But then the dog reached her, very real and very warm, circling her excitedly. And behind it came a horse carrying a rider bundled against the cold. "Help," she tried to call, but her voice emerged as little more than a whisper. She raised one arm weakly, then collapsed into the snow as her remaining strength abandoned her. Finn dismounted before Copper had fully stopped, rushing to the fallen figure. He turned the person over gently, revealing a woman's face, her skin alarmingly pale with hints of blue around her lips. Her eyelids fluttered as she fought to remain conscious. "Madam, can you hear me?" Finn asked urgently, pulling off a glove to check her pulse. It was there, but weak and erratic. When his hand moved to assess her for injuries, he froze in shock as it passed over her midsection. She was with child far along from the size of her belly. "Dear God," he muttered, immediately shifting into action. He had to get her warm and fast. 2 lives depended on it. "Madam, I'm going to help you. My cabin's not far." He wasn't sure she could hear him, but he spoke anyway as he wrapped her in one of the blankets he'd brought. "I need to get you on my horse." With extreme care, he lifted her, alarmed at how light she felt despite her pregnancy. Her head lolled against his chest as he maneuvered her onto Copper, then mounted behind her, cradling her body against his to share what warmth he could. "Ranger, home," he commanded, and the dog took off, leading the way back through the storm. The journey back seemed interminable. Finn kept one arm tight around the woman, the other controlling Copper's reins. He spoke constantly to the horse, to the dog, to the unconscious woman, anything to keep his own mind alert. The woman stirred occasionally, mumbling incoherent words, her hands reflexively moving to protect her belly. When they finally reached the cabin, Finn worked quickly. He carried her inside, laying her gently on his bed near the fireplace. He stoked the dying embers, adding logs until flames leapt high. Only then did he turn his full attention to his unexpected guest. Her face was youthful beneath the pallor of cold, perhaps mid-20s. Her blonde hair was matted with snow and ice. Most concerning were her hands and feet, dangerously cold and possibly frostbitten. Finn hesitated only a moment before beginning to remove her wet clothing. Modesty had no place when survival was at stake. He worked methodically, replacing her soaked garments with his own spare clothing, far too large but dry and warm. He rubbed her hands and feet gently with warm cloths, careful not to apply too much heat too quickly to her frozen extremities. Throughout it all, he maintained a professional demeanor, though his heart ached at the sight of her swollen belly and the thought of what might have happened had he not found her. Once she was dry and wrapped in every blanket he owned, Finn prepared a broth, holding the cup to her lips when she showed signs of consciousness. She swallowed reflexively at first, then with more awareness. "That's it," he encouraged. "Slow sips." Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of spring moss. Confusion gave way to fear as she realized she was in an unfamiliar place with a strange man. The baby, were her first coherent words, hands moving protectively to her abdomen. "Your baby seems fine, madam," Finn assured her, keeping his distance to avoid frightening her further. "You're both safe now. I found you in the snow and brought you to my cabin. I'm Finn Zachary." She stared at him, processing his words through the fog of her ordeal. "Genevieve," she finally replied. "Genevieve Sutton, I was trying to reach Apache Junction." "You're close," Finn told her, "about 10 miles south of it, but traveling in that storm was suicide, Mrs. Sutton, especially in your condition." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I know that now. The stagecoach stopped at a way station, but I thought—" She shook her head. "I thought I could make it. The driver said it wasn't far." "Not far in good weather," Finn agreed, offering more broth. "But that blizzard turned the landscape into a death trap." "What's waiting for you in Apache Junction that couldn't wait out the storm?" "A teaching position," Genevieve answered, accepting the broth gratefully. "And my husband's cousin. Henry, my husband, died 3 months ago. Consumption. His cousin offered me work at the school he oversees." Finn nodded, understanding dawning. A pregnant widow without means had few options in this harsh territory. "Edgar Sutton?" he asked. Surprise flashed across her face. "Yes, do you know him?" "Apache Junction isn't large, Mrs. Sutton. I know most everyone, though I keep to myself generally." Finn didn't elaborate on his knowledge of Edgar Sutton, a hard man with a reputation for strict religious views and little charity, despite his position as school superintendent. He wondered if Edgar knew about his cousin's widow's condition, and doubted the man would welcome her with open arms. "Please call me Genevieve," she said, attempting to sit up further but wincing as sensation returned painfully to her extremities. "Careful," Finn cautioned. "Your hands and feet were nearly frostbitten. You need to rest and let your body recover." "The baby." She began again, concern etching her features. "Has been moving," Finn assured her, a slight blush coloring his weathered cheeks. "I noticed while getting you into dry clothes. I apologize for the intrusion, but you saved our lives," Genevieve interrupted. "There's nothing to apologize for." They fell into silence, broken only by the crackling fire, and Ranger's contented snoring from his spot near the hearth. Outside, the storm continued its assault, but within the cabin's sturdy walls, a fragile peace had been established between two strangers brought together by circumstance and survival. The night passed with Finn checking on Genevieve hourly, ensuring her extremities were warming properly and that no signs of dangerous frostbite appeared. By morning, color had returned to her face, though exhaustion still shadowed her eyes. The storm had diminished to occasional gusts and light snowfall. "You should try to eat something substantial," Finn suggested, preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal porridge sweetened with molasses. "You're eating for 2. Genevieve accepted the bowl gratefully. "You're very kind, Mr. Zachary. I don't know how to repay you." "Finn," he corrected. "And staying alive is payment enough. I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd ignored what I felt last night." "What you felt?" she questioned, taking a careful spoonful of the hot porridge. Finn looked slightly embarrassed. "I can't explain it properly. I just knew someone was out there needing help. My mother used to say some people can sense things others can't. I never put much stock in it until I started ranching. It's useful for predicting weather changes, finding lost cattle." He shrugged, "Finding lost people. Then I'm grateful for your gift," Genevieve said sincerely. "I was certain I would die out there." "What made you leave the way station?" Finn asked, settling into a chair across from her, his own breakfast untouched. "Surely they advised against it." Genevieve lowered her spoon, shame evident in her expression. "The station master's wife was less than welcoming when she realized my condition. I'm a widow, but—" She gestured helplessly. The timing makes it appear otherwise. Henry died 3 months ago, but I'm 6 months along. People draw conclusions. Understanding dawned on Finn's face. And you feared Edgar Sutton might draw the same conclusion if you arrived with other passengers who'd heard this woman's judgment. Yes, she admitted. I thought if I arrived alone, I could explain privately. Henry was ill for a long time before he passed. The baby is his, but people see what they want to see. Finn nodded, his expression neutral. People around here can be quick to judge what they don't understand, but risking your life and your child's wasn't the answer. I realize that now, she said quietly. Desperation clouds judgment. That it does, Finn agreed, finally starting on his own breakfast. The storm's letting up. Once you've regained some strength, I can take you into Apache Junction. Should be safe to travel by tomorrow if the weather holds. Genevieve looked down at her borrowed clothes, Finn's flannel shirt hanging like a dress over her frame, and felt a wave of inadequacy. My clothes are drying, Finn supplied, though I'm not sure they'll be suitable for travel. I might have some things that could be altered to fit you better than these. I'm no seamstress, but my mother taught me basic mending before she passed. You've lost both parents? Genevieve asked. Finn nodded. Pa to a mining accident when I was 12, Ma to fever 5 years later. I've been on my own since I was 17, ranching mostly, some hunting and trapping when necessary. And no wife? The question slipped out before Genevieve could reconsider its propriety. She blushed. Forgive me, that's not my business. Finn's lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. No offense taken. And no wife. Never seemed to find the time or the right woman. Most ladies aren't eager to live this far from town, and I'm not one for social gatherings. He gestured around the modest cabin. It's not much, but it's peaceful. It's lovely, Genevieve said honestly. The cabin was simple but meticulously maintained, with handcrafted furniture and shelves lined with books, more than she would have expected from a solitary rancher. Finn looked surprised at her assessment. It serves its purpose. Now you should rest more. Your body's been through an ordeal. Genevieve didn't argue. Despite having just woken, exhaustion pulled at her. As she settled back against the pillows, she watched Finn move about the cabin with efficient motions, banking the fire, washing the breakfast dishes, checking supplies. There was something comforting in his quiet competence, so different from Henry's intellectual but impractical nature. Her eyelids grew heavy as she contemplated the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this man's home. The day passed quietly. Finn tended to his animals, cleared paths through the snow around the cabin, and prepared a heartier stew for their evening meal. Genevieve slept intermittently, waking to find Finn had left water, food, or fresh tea within her reach each time. By evening, she felt strong enough to sit at the table for their meal, wrapped in a blanket against the lingering chill. "Your color's better," Finn observed as they ate. "How are you feeling?" "Stronger," she confirmed, though still quite sore. "The baby has been active today, which reassures me." "That's good," Finn said, his eyes briefly dropping to her middle before returning to his bowl. "I've been thinking about your situation. Edgar Sutton isn't known for his compassion, especially regarding delicate matters. Are you certain he's expecting you?" Genevieve hesitated. "We corresponded. He offered the teaching position, but I never explicitly mentioned my condition in my letters. I assumed Henry might have told him before he passed, but perhaps not." Finn's expression grew troubled. "Mrs. Sutton, Genevieve, I don't wish to alarm you, but Edgar is a strict man with rigid views on propriety. If he believes what others might about your situation, I fear the welcome you receive may not be what you're hoping for." Fear flickered across her face. "What options do I have? I have no money for lodging, no other connections here. The teaching position was to provide for myself and the baby. Finn considered her words carefully before responding. I have a proposal, though please understand it comes with no expectations or conditions. He took a deep breath. Stay here until the baby comes. I have the space, and it would give you time to correspond properly with Edgar. Explain your situation fully before you meet him in person. Genevieve stared at him, astonished. Mr. Zachary Finn, you can't possibly mean to house a strange woman for 3 months. Why not? He countered. As you can see, I have the room. The winter will make travel difficult regardless. Come spring, you'd be in a better position to start your new life with your child already born and your health fully recovered. People would talk, Genevieve protested weakly. Your reputation, Finn laughed softly. My reputation is already that of a recluse who prefers horses to people. I doubt it could suffer much more damage. Besides, I rarely concern myself with town gossip. I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition if it's freely offered, he interrupted gently. Consider it practical rather than charitable if that eases your mind. I could use help around the cabin, and you need a safe place to await your child's arrival. A simple arrangement between neighbors. Genevieve felt tears welling in her eyes, overwhelmed by this stranger's kindness. Why would you do this for someone you don't know? Finn was quiet for a long moment. Because 18 years ago, my mother found herself in a similar position after my father died. A neighbor helped us through that first difficult winter. I'm simply passing on the kindness that was shown to us. He shrugged, seemingly embarrassed by his own sentimentality. Think about it. You don't need to decide tonight. But as Genevieve lay awake that night, listening to Finn's steady breathing from his makeshift bed near the fire, she knew her decision was already made. The thought of facing Edgar Sutton's judgment in her current state filled her with dread. Finn Zachary, for all his gruff exterior and solitary ways, had shown her more kindness in one day than she'd experienced in months. Her baby kicked, as if offering an opinion on the matter. I think you're right, she whispered to her unborn child. We'll stay just until you arrive. Then we'll face the world together. The next morning, she told Finn her decision. If he was surprised, he didn't show it. He merely nodded and said, Then we should send word to Edgar that you've been delayed but will arrive in the spring. No need to mention specifics yet. Genevieve agreed, relief washing over her at having a plan, temporary though it might be. She had 3 months to prepare for motherhood in this unexpected sanctuary, guided by a quiet cowboy who seemed to ask nothing in return for his generosity. Neither could have predicted how those 3 months would transform them both. The first week established their routine. Finn rose before dawn to tend the livestock, a small herd of cattle, 3 horses including Copper, and a few chickens that provided eggs. Genevieve insisted on taking over the cooking and indoor chores, working within the limitations of her advancing pregnancy. They ate their meals together, conversation gradually flowing more easily as they discovered shared interests in books and music. Finn owned a battered violin that he played with surprising skill in the evenings, filling the cabin with melodies that ranged from joyful to haunting. Where did you learn to play like that? Genevieve asked one evening, mesmerized by the way his calloused fingers coaxed such beautiful sounds from the instrument. My mother taught me the basics, Finn explained, setting the violin aside. She played in church back east before marrying my father and moving west. After they died, playing was my way of keeping their memory alive during lonely nights. It's beautiful, she said sincerely. My father played piano, but I never learned. Henry thought music was frivolous, a waste of productive time. Finn raised an eyebrow. No disrespect to your late husband, but there's value in beauty for its own sake, especially out here where life can be harsh. Sometimes music is what keeps the darkness at bay. Genevieve contemplated his words. Henry had been practical and focused on intellectual pursuits, viewing artistic expressions with mild disdain. It was one of many small disappointments in their marriage that she'd learned to accept. Now, watching Finn's hands reverently return the violin to its case, she wondered what other joys she'd denied herself in the name of practicality. "Would you teach me?" "After the baby comes, of course," she asked impulsively. Finn looked surprised, then pleased. "I'd be honored. Though I'm a poor substitute for a proper teacher." "I think you're exactly the teacher I need," Genevieve replied, not fully understanding the depth of truth in her words. As December deepened, so did their connection. Finn made trips into Apache Junction for supplies, always returning with small comforts for Genevieve, peppermint candies for her occasional nausea, softer soap that wouldn't irritate her skin, even fabric and thread so she could prepare clothing for the baby. He never mentioned these items specifically, simply leaving them where she would find them, as if embarrassed by his thoughtfulness. Genevieve, for her part, transformed the bachelor cabin with subtle touches: curtains made from flour sacks, wild pine boughs arranged with dried berries for color, the organization of Finn's books into a proper library. She read aloud in the evenings when his eyes were too tired from squinting at tracks or mending fences, her voice bringing to life adventures neither had experienced. During a heavy snowfall in early January that confined them indoors for days, Finn taught her to play checkers. Their games grew competitive, each delighting in the other's frustration at a particularly clever move. "You're a natural strategist," Finn commented after Genevieve won their third consecutive game. "You'd make a formidable poker player." Genevieve laughed, the sound bright in the cozy cabin. "A pregnant schoolteacher playing poker? Scandalous, Mr. Zachary. Life's too short to avoid something enjoyable just because others might disapprove," he replied, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer than necessary. Genevieve felt warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the crackling fire. She looked away first, rearranging the checker pieces with unnecessary care. "Another game?" she asked, her voice slightly higher than normal. Finn studied her face, seeming to read the confusion there. "Perhaps tomorrow," he said gently. "Your back has been bothering you. You should rest." It was true her advancing pregnancy was taking its toll, making sleep difficult and movement increasingly cumbersome. Finn had crafted additional pillows from spare fabric stuffed with clean straw to help support her growing belly at night. These small kindnesses continually caught her off guard. "Finn," she said as he helped her from the chair, his hand steady under her elbow. "Why are you alone? Truly. You're too good a man to have never found someone to share your life." The question clearly startled him. He released her arm once she was steady, taking a step back. "There was someone once," he admitted, surprising them both with his candor. "Catherine, we were to be married 8 years ago." Genevieve waited, sensing there was more to the story. When Finn continued, his voice was measured, as if carefully controlling deeper emotion. "There was a diphtheria outbreak. She was helping nurse the sick children in town. I begged her to be careful, but Catherine always put others first." He stared into the fire. "She died 2 weeks before our wedding day. By the time I recovered from my own bout with the disease, she was already in the ground." "Oh, Finn," Genevieve whispered, her heart aching for his loss. "I'm so sorry." He shrugged, the gesture belying the pain evident in his eyes. "Life continues, but after that I found it easier to keep to myself. Caring for others makes you vulnerable." "Yes," Genevieve agreed softly, "but not caring at all makes you half alive." Their eyes met again, understanding passing between them, two people who had experienced loss differently but felt its weight similarly. Something shifted in that moment, though neither acknowledged it directly. "Rest now," Finn said, breaking the spell. "Tomorrow I'll teach you how to make my mother's bread pudding. The baby will appreciate the extra sweetness." As January melted into February, Genevieve's time grew nearer. The baby moved constantly now, pressing against her ribs and bladder with equal disregard for her comfort. Finn arranged for the midwife from Apache Junction, Mrs. Benton, to visit and assess Genevieve's condition. "First child?" Mrs. Benton asked as she measured Genevieve's abdomen with experienced hands. "Yes," Genevieve answered nervously. "Everything feels as it should," the older woman assured her. "Baby's head is down already, which is good. I'd say you have about 3 weeks, though first babies often take their time." After examining Genevieve privately, Mrs. Benton spoke with both of them in the main room of the cabin. "Mr. Zachary tells me you're a widow, Mrs. Sutton. I'm sorry for your loss. Will you be staying in Apache Junction after the birth?" Genevieve glanced at Finn, who stood by the window, giving them space while remaining within earshot. "That's the plan. I have a teaching position waiting for me." Mrs. Benton nodded approvingly. "Education is important, especially out here, though you'll need help with the baby while you work." "Her husband's cousin is expecting her," Finn interjected. "Edgar Sutton." Mrs. Benton's expression shifted subtly. "I see. Well, I'll be here for the birth regardless. Send for me when the pains come regularly, about 5 minutes apart. Mr. Zachary knows how to reach me." After the midwife left, promising to return in 2 weeks to check on Genevieve's progress, a contemplative silence fell over the cabin. Finn busied himself preparing dinner while Genevieve sat by the fire, her hands resting on her belly. "She didn't seem pleased about Edgar," Genevieve finally observed. Finn measured his words carefully. "Mrs. Benton is a kind woman who's seen much of life. Her reactions often reflect that experience." "You're avoiding saying something directly," Genevieve pressed. "Please, Finn. I need to know what I might be facing." Finn sighed, setting down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables. "Edgar Sutton presents himself as a pillar of the community church, elder, school superintendent, businessman. But there are stories. His wife died young, some say from exhaustion and poor treatment. He's raised their son with an iron hand. The boy, Thomas, is rarely seen smiling." Fear clutched at Genevieve's heart. "And this is the man I've pinned my hopes on." Finn moved to sit beside her, his expression serious. "You don't have to go to him, Genevieve. There are other options." "What options?" she asked, fighting back tears of frustration. "An unwed mother, for that's how they'll see me regardless of my marriage certificate, has few respectable choices." "You could stay," Finn said quietly. "Here, I mean, after the baby comes." Genevieve stared at him, certain she'd misunderstood. "Stay as what? Your housekeeper?" A flush crept up Finn's neck. "As my wife, if you were willing." The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back or ignore. Genevieve felt as if the room were spinning slightly, her mind struggling to process his offer. "Finn, you can't possibly—" "I know it's sudden," he interrupted, his voice steady despite the color in his cheeks. "And I'm not asking for anything you don't wish to give. It would be a marriage of convenience, providing you and the child with security and respectability. I have a small ranch, not grand but sufficient. You could still teach if you wished once the baby is older." "Why would you do this?" Genevieve asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Finn met her gaze directly. "Because in these weeks together, I've come to care for you, Genevieve. More than I thought possible after Catherine. I care for your child too, though it's not of my blood. I think we could build a good life together, based on friendship and mutual respect. In time, perhaps more, but I would never presume or pressure you." Tears filled Genevieve's eyes, not of sadness but overwhelming emotion. "You are the most honorable man I've ever known, Finn Zachary." "Is that a yes?" he asked, hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. "It's I need time to think," she answered honestly. "This isn't just my future but my child's as well. I can't make such a decision hastily, no matter how generous the offer." Finn nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need. Nothing between us changes unless you wish it to." He rose, returning to dinner preparations as if he hadn't just offered to reshape his entire life around her needs. That night, Genevieve lay awake, her mind racing with possibilities. Marriage to Finn would solve her practical problems. She and her child would have a home, protection, security. But marriage was meant to be more than a practical arrangement. Henry had been a practical choice, steady, educated, respectable, but their union had lacked passion, genuine intimacy. She'd resigned herself to that absence, believing comfort and security were adequate compensation. Now, watching Finn's sleeping form across the room, she wondered what it might be like to be truly cherished by a man like him, a man whose quiet strength concealed deep wells of compassion and tenderness. A man who had already shown more care for her unborn child than its own father had in the months before his death. Henry had accepted the pregnancy as an inevitable consequence of marriage, but had shown little interest in the developing life beyond academic curiosity. Finn, by contrast, spoke directly to her belly when he thought she was napping, telling the baby stories about the ranch animals or describing the landscapes the child would someday explore. Was it possible to build love from friendship and respect? To find passion with a man who had already seen her at her most vulnerable and still looked at her with admiration? The baby kicked forcefully, as if offering an opinion. Genevieve smiled, stroking her belly. "You're right," she whispered. "We could do far worse than Finn Zachary." She didn't realize Finn was awake, listening to her one-sided conversation with her unborn child, a tentative hope building in his chest. 3 days later, as they sat together after dinner, Genevieve finally gave him her answer. "I accept your proposal," she said simply. "Not just for security or the baby's sake, though those are factors, but because I believe we could build something real together, something worthwhile." The smile that transformed Finn's usually serious face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "You won't regret it," he promised, taking her hand carefully in his. "I'll be a good husband to you and a good father to your child." "Our child," Genevieve corrected gently. "If we're to be married, this baby will be yours in every way that matters." Finn's eyes grew suspiciously bright. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you for that gift. I'll treasure it always." They were married 2 days later by the traveling circuit preacher who happened to be passing through Apache Junction. Mrs. Benton and the local doctor served as witnesses, both beaming with approval at the union that had developed under such unusual circumstances. Genevieve wore her best dress, altered to accommodate her advanced pregnancy, with wildflowers Finn had somehow found despite the winter season woven into her hair. Finn had shaved carefully and donned a clean shirt and his least worn trousers, his hair still damp from washing. They spoke their vows clearly, their hands joined together, promises exchanged with genuine hope rather than mere practicality. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Zachary." It was their first kiss, gentle, tentative, but filled with promise. When they parted, Genevieve saw something in Finn's eyes that made her heart flutter with possibilities. Mrs. Benton insisted on preparing a small celebration meal back at the cabin. shooing the newlyweds outside for a few moments of privacy while she worked. Standing on the porch, watching the winter sun cast golden light across the snow-covered landscape, Genevieve felt Finn's arms encircle her from behind, his hands resting lightly on her belly. "Are you happy?" he asked softly against her ear. "Yes," she answered truthfully. "Happier than I expected to be again." The baby kicked against his palm and Finn laughed with delight. "I think we have approval." "A good thing, since we're stuck with each other now," Genevieve teased, leaning back against his solid warmth. "No place I'd rather be stuck," Finn replied, and she knew he meant it. Their wedding night was not what such nights typically entailed. Finn insisted Genevieve take the bed as always, while he prepared to sleep in his usual spot near the fire. "Finn," Genevieve called softly as he banked the fire for the night. "You don't have to sleep there anymore. This is your bed, too." He turned, uncertainty evident in his posture. "Genevieve, I meant what I said. I expect nothing from you that you're not ready to give." "I know," she said simply. "But I'd like my husband beside me tonight, just to hold me. Can we start there?" The tenderness in his expression as he approached the bed nearly brought tears to her eyes. He settled carefully beside her, mindful of her comfort, one arm gently cradling her against his side. "Is this all right?" he asked, his voice hushed in the darkness. "Perfect," she whispered, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. It was the first night since Henry's death that she'd fallen asleep feeling truly safe and cherished. They settled into married life with surprising ease. Finn took to referring to the baby as our little cowpoke, speaking directly to Genevieve's belly about ranching skills he planned to teach and adventures they would share. Genevieve found herself falling more deeply for her husband with each passing day, moved by his genuine excitement about the child and his constant, unobtrusive care for her comfort. Their physical relationship progressed slowly, with gentle kisses gradually becoming more passionate, exploratory touches growing bolder as trust deepened between them. Finn never pressed for more than Genevieve was ready to give, but his eyes often held a heat that promised fulfillment when the time was right. As February waned, Genevieve's discomfort increased. The baby had dropped lower, making breathing easier but walking more difficult. Finn rarely left her side now, arranging for a neighboring ranch hand to check his cattle, unwilling to be far from home as her time approached. "I've been thinking about names," Genevieve said one evening as Finn massaged her aching lower back, his strong hands working magic on her tense muscles. "Oh," he responded, careful to keep pressure gentle yet effective. "Any particular ones calling to you? For a boy, I thought perhaps James, after my father," she said. "But I'd like Finn as his middle name." His hands paused momentarily. "You do that?" "Of course," Genevieve said, turning to see his face. "You're his father in every way that matters. He should carry part of your name." Emotion flashed across Finn's features. "I'd be honored. And if it's a girl, Eliza Catherine," Genevieve said softly. "Eliza was my mother's name and Catherine." "After Catherine," Finn finished, his voice thick. "Genevieve, are you certain?" She reached for his hand, squeezing it firmly. "Completely certain. She was important to you, which makes her important to me. Our child will know about her, about the kind woman who would have been your wife if fate hadn't intervened." Finn brought her hand to his lips, kissing it reverently. "I don't deserve you," he murmured against her skin. "You deserve happiness, Finn. We both do. After everything, we deserve this chance." Their eyes met, a current of understanding passing between them that transcended words. Finn leaned forward, capturing her lips in a kiss that conveyed everything he couldn't express aloud: gratitude, tenderness, growing love, and the promise of a future together. The kiss deepened. Genevieve's arms winding around his neck as his hands cradled her face with exquisite care. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily, awareness of their situation heightened. "When the baby comes," Finn whispered against her lips, "and when you're ready, I want to show you how deeply I've come to care for you, Genevieve. Not just with words, but with everything I am." "I'd like that," she whispered back, her heart racing at the promise in his voice. "Very much." Their tender moment was interrupted by a sharp pain that caused Genevieve to gasp and double over. Finn's expression immediately shifted from passion to concern. "Genevieve, is it the baby?" She nodded, unable to speak as the contraction gripped her. When it passed, she exhaled shakily. "I think it's time. The pains started this morning, but they were mild. This was different." Finn's face paled, but his voice remained steady. "How far apart?" "Maybe 15 minutes. I've been timing them in my head." He nodded, immediately shifting into action. "Too early for Mrs. Benton, but I'll prepare everything. We've discussed what to do." He helped her to the bed, arranging pillows to support her back. "I'll heat water and gather the supplies she told us to have ready." As Finn moved efficiently around the cabin, Genevieve was struck by the stark difference between this experience and what she had imagined months ago. She had expected to face childbirth alone in a strange town, possibly under the judgmental eye of Edgar Sutton. Instead, she had a husband who spoke soothingly to her through each contraction, who wiped her brow with cool cloths, who promised her repeatedly that she was strong enough for what lay ahead. The contractions intensified and grew closer together. When they reached 7 minutes apart, Finn prepared to leave for Mrs. Benton. "I don't want to leave you," he said, kneeling beside the bed, his face etched with conflict. "But she needs to be here." "Go," Genevieve urged between pains. "I'll be all right until you return." "The baby isn't coming in the next hour." Finn pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'll ride like the wind. Ranger will stay with you. He'll bark if anyone approaches." He was gone less than an hour, returning with not only Mrs. Benton but also Dr. Wilson, who sometimes assisted with difficult births. Genevieve was relieved to see them both, the contractions now coming every 5 minutes and growing increasingly intense. "You're progressing well," Mrs. Benton assured her after a brief examination. "First babies usually take their time, but yours seems eager to meet the world." The next hours blurred into a haze of pain, encouragement, and determination. Finn never left Genevieve's side, letting her crush his hand during contractions, offering water between pains, whispering words of love and support constantly. Mrs. Benton directed the process with calm efficiency, while Dr. Wilson monitored for any complications. As dawn broke, painting the snow-covered landscape outside in rose-gold light, Genevieve gathered her remaining strength for the final pushes. Finn supported her back, his face close to hers. "You can do this," he murmured. "You're the strongest person I've ever known, just a little more." With a primal cry and one last tremendous effort, Genevieve felt the baby slide from her body. A moment of terrifying silence followed, then the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard, her child's first angry wail at entering the cold world. "A boy," Mrs. Benton announced triumphantly. "A fine, healthy boy." Tears streamed down Genevieve's face as the midwife placed the squalling, red-faced infant on her chest. "Hello, James Finn," she whispered, her fingers gently tracing his tiny features. "We've been waiting for you." She looked up to find Finn staring at them both, wonder and love transforming his face. Tears tracked unashamedly down his cheeks as he reached out a tentative hand to touch the baby's dark hair. "He's perfect," Finn said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Just like his mother, Mrs. Benton and Dr. Wilson worked efficiently to deliver the afterbirth and ensure Genevieve was stable. then discreetly stepped outside to give the new family a few moments of privacy. "Thank you," Finn whispered, pressing his forehead against Genevieve's, their son cradled between them. "For this gift. For trusting me with both of you." "Thank you for finding us in that blizzard," Genevieve replied softly, "for saving us, for giving us a home and a future." Finn kissed her gently, then the baby's forehead. "This is just the beginning," he promised. "The best is yet to come." As winter melted into spring, the small family flourished. Finn Zachary grew stronger each day, his curious eyes taking in the world around him. Genevieve recovered from the birth more quickly than expected, eager to embrace her new role as both mother and true wife. By April, when wildflowers carpeted the meadows around their cabin, she and Finn had discovered the full expression of their love for each other, their physical union as beautiful and right as their emotional bond. Word spread through Apache Junction about the cowboy who had tracked a pregnant widow through a blizzard and ended up finding his own happiness in the process. Edgar Sutton made a formal call once the roads were passable, clearly surprised by the developments but offering stilted congratulations. "The teaching position is still available when you're ready," he told Genevieve stiffly. "Though I understand if your circumstances have changed your plans." Genevieve, holding James while Finn stood protectively nearby, smiled politely. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Sutton. I may consider it when James is a bit older. For now, my place is here with my family." As Edgar departed, clearly uncomfortable with the domestic scene, Finn slipped his arm around Genevieve's waist. "You could still teach, you know. I'd support whatever you wanted to do." She leaned against his solid warmth, their son cooing between them. "I know you would, and someday I might want that, but right now this is everything I need. You and James are my whole world." "And you're mine," Finn replied, turning her to face him. "Both of you." "I never imagined I could be this happy again." "Neither did I," Genevieve admitted. "When I set out for Apache Junction, I was simply hoping for survival. Instead, I found love." "We found each other," Finn corrected gently, "and that makes all the difference." As the years passed, their family grew. A daughter, Eliza Catherine, joined them 2 years after James. Then twin boys, Samuel and Joseph, 3 years later. The small cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family, with Finn adding rooms as needed, his carpentry skills improving with each project. Genevieve eventually did teach, but not in Apache Junction's formal school. She established a small schoolhouse on their property, educating not only their own children but those from neighboring ranches too remote for daily trips to town. Her reputation for excellence spread throughout the territory, with families sometimes relocating nearby specifically so their children could benefit from her instruction. Finn's ranch prospered as well. With Genevieve's encouragement, he expanded beyond cattle to include horse breeding, developing a line of sturdy, intelligent mounts particularly suited to the demanding Arizona terrain. Their partnership extended to all aspects of life, each supporting the other's dreams while building their shared vision. On cold winter nights, when the wind howled reminiscently of that fateful blizzard, they would gather their children around the fire and tell the story of how their family began, how a desperate journey through a snowstorm had led to the greatest love either of them had ever known. "That's why we never ignore our instincts," Finn would explain, his arm around Genevieve, their children wide-eyed at the tale they never tired of hearing. "Your mother's courage and my stubborn tracking saved us both. And brought us together," Genevieve would add, her hand finding his, their fingers intertwining as naturally as their lives had. Many years later, when their hair had silvered, and their grandchildren played in the meadows where James had taken his first steps, Finn and Genevieve still marveled at the twist of fate that had united them. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, they would whisper their gratitude for that terrible blizzard that had become the best thing to ever happen to them. "I tracked you for miles through that storm," Finn would murmur, his voice gravelly with age but still filled with wonder, "and found everything I never knew I was searching for." "And I was lost," Genevieve would reply, nestling against the heart that had beat faithfully beside hers for decades, "until you brought me home."